Welcome to Rauta and worst to best videos with a Swedish side project known as Diabolical Masquerade. Now, I can't really say exactly when I found out about this band, which was back then already known as a kind of a Katatonia side project, but it was somewhere late 90s, I would guess, from mid to late 90s, pretty much around the first album when it was released. I still have the original copies, which I purchased back in the days. That is starting with the debut album Raven Dusk in my heart. And I don't know, there's very much kind of nostalgia brought to this one, for me anyways, because, I mean, back in the days, that was the only album out there when I found about the band. And now that I went through this whole discography via listening to Spotify at the gym, while driving my car and so forth, I can't really say it feels so much different than going through the CDs. But why I decided to pick this one out of my collection is here to kind of show, yes, I really do like all of them. So this side project did no more than 4 albums. First, this Raven Dusk one, which got my attention and got me to like the band. And a bit later, this second album, The Phantom Lodge, which kind of seemed to step up the game. I will get into the details a little bit later. Then Nightwork, the third album, which then again was, once again, a little bit different. And finally, Death's Design, the original motion picture soundtrack, which felt a little bit weird for a Diabolical Masquerade kind of a side project. Now, for a long time, I always just thought it was only one man doing the bands. Maybe I read the liner notes and just kind of forgot everything I read. Maybe something else happened in my weird brain and all. But anyway, more or less, I always kind of felt this was mostly, just one man operated project. And that is Blackheim, mostly known for his work in Katatonia. But as it is, there are of course a lot of guest musicians or session musicians, and also, well, Dan Svane, man of many bands and productions with his own studio and all, also being president of the band, kind of like more lurking in the background, I guess, but still an important part of the band. I really can't say when it comes to details and all how much these guys decided to, share the workload with the music. But we're not talking about that. We're gonna take a look at this band and talk about why it's so important Swedish side project. It is here on Metal Archives considered as atmospheric avant-garde black metal. Now, I'm not so sure about that avant-garde thing because for many people it means very different things, and to be honest, it could be a little bit misleading when it comes to the music of Diabolical Masquerade. But it could be said this is melodic, synth-driven, and yes, atmospheric black metal. It's very far away from those raw kind of bands, or very much different from bands that are so much, guitar and riff driven bands, etc. It's not exactly the New Emperor or Lair Dimmu Borgir or stuff like that, but these keyboards play a big role in the band. And finally, what came to be certain kind of a apex moment for the whole band is this Death's Design, the last album before the band quit a few years later. So this whole career didn't span more than roughly 11 years, and these albums even less so. I mean, started with 1996 with Raven Dusk in My Heart, which was roughly more or less the year when I found about the band, and by 2001 it was all over when it comes to the actual releases. But as always, there was the demo phase before that, so never actually heard that promo 1993. But like I said, Katatonia had been already going on there, and one might only wonder why do you even need this kind of a project when there is Katatonia. But as you might already know, Katatonia went kind of a different path. I mean, more gothic type of dark metallic kind of a stuff, whereas Diabolical Masquerade always more or less focused on doing black metal in its own terms. So it's very much the kind of a solo thing by Blackheim, his own vision and all that stuff. But once again, I don't want to put Dan Svane off the chart here. I'm just merely saying how I got the feeling of the whole band is more or less how Blackheim, visioned it to be. Anyway, 4 albums in and all of them are quality. Kind of hard to put them in the proper order if you really think about it when you like all of them. Now, if you also take a look here in Metal Archives, it's quite interesting to see that the first albums are on average 87%, very high. But even higher it goes when Nightwork is brought into play with 94%, and Death's Design even further with 95%. That is really, really crazy when you think about it's on average. Okay, maybe only 4 reviews, so maybe they're just hardcore fanboys, but still, really, really high average scores. Now, I can't say I can go that far, but then again, I'm really picky and not exactly a good fanboy, so there is that. But let's talk about the music. Throughout these 4 albums, the band's main idea or vision is pretty much the same. There are lots of synth parts, there are lots of melodies, there are lots of ideas which go kind of beyond the border of typical black metal, and in a good way. Also, what is really happening here basically with all of the album, it's clear that Blackheim is always flirting with old school heavy metal, that or slash trash metal. There are parts, even if it means only a single song, on each of these albums you can pretty much hear his love that goes way beyond black metal, to the times before black metal in fact. And it's kind of interesting because it only, appears like once on every album basically. So there's this one dude who kind of stands out on, the crowd and like, hey, who is this guy? He doesn't belong to the world of black metal. But I love those songs. Not only because they are different, not only because, they kind of break the pattern here, but because also I have similar kind of passion and love for old school heavy metal and thrash metal. So while they could be removed and that wouldn't really ruin any of these albums, I kind of like they are there just to make a point, if you will. It's like if you have a bunch of letters, any kind of logo, you see these letters all written in the same color, and then like dot above the letter I is suddenly different color, and it kind of takes your attention. This is that kind of a solution, really. So it's all about drinking beer all night, and suddenly you decide to go for a glass of red wine, and everybody's like, what's going on with you, dude? Anyway, weird metaphors aside, let's talk about music once again. So, what started with Raven Dusk in my heart being kind of a traditional, synth-driven, very atmospheric and beautiful black metal with drum machines and all, evolved into Phantom Lodge, which was like a step up in the game. Everything was kind of more, say, professional. It seems like kind of songwriting got a little bit better in ways, at least. But also how the production, that was, in my opinion, the biggest step, really. Everything started to sound like from a demo-ish solo project to a different level, like, hey, this is going to be a real band. Well, sort of. With Nightwork, everything was honed even further. And then Death's Design suddenly takes a big step forward. And suddenly it's this like a motion picture soundtrack kind of thing. And I'll prove this to, or rather show it to you in a different way. This has massive amount of 61 songs. Now it sounds a lot when we're talking about metal releases. But if you think it's like a, soundtrack, it's not that weird. Some tracks are like here, 6 songs, 36 songs, 6 seconds, sorry, 17 seconds and all that stuff. So it's not like all of these songs are like minutes long. I mean, they have a phase like something is happening and then starts something else. So this is something that you like to listen to as a whole, in this particular order. But it doesn't mean that these are not actually individual songs. And there's various amounts of different kind of patterns or ideas here going throughout the thing. And as you can see, mostly instrumental. There are spoken parts, yeah, not so much typical, black metal singing and all that stuff. And there are parts which are super sweet and all, like very, very away from any kind of black metal. So this is a kind of the weird guy in the room, if you really think about it, even in terms of Diabolical Masquerade. And even as such, it still sounds Diabolical Masquerade, both good and bad. So there is that. So it's definitely this weird kid in the school, where the others are more like, siblings, like Raven Dusk being the big brother, the Phantom Lords being the middle one, and Nightwork being the youngest. And Death's design, yeah, maybe genetically, DNA-wise, he's part of the family, but he's really that weirdo. Or maybe he's not exactly weirdo. Maybe those three others are just, brothers or sisters. That's one person is maybe, I don't know, trans person. I really don't know. My metaphors are sometimes really odd. Just saying it looks and sounds like them, and at the same time it's also quite a bit of different thing here. It's also clearly the most soundtrack-like. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of bands were inspired by that, because there is clearly a lot of creativity put into this particular CD or release. That is, you can pretty much hear how soundtrack-like it is when it comes to certain effects done with keyboards and whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised if bands like Fintroll, for instance, and other bands which are strongly dominated by keyboards and effects and choir parts and all orchestrations would be, tapping to this very same vein. So I can imagine that design, in a way, could be very much a pioneer work when it comes to this kind of a very soundtrack-like black metal. So it's a weird one, but I really like them. But what would be the proper order for, worst to best? Because, like I said, I like all of them. They're different, but also they're very much the same. Much like Judas Iscariot, which I recently had for worst to best. And this is when it gets tricky. I had to give them a kind of refreshing spin for a couple of times. I mean, I've been listening to these for a lot of times in the past. But in order to put them worst to the best wasn't exactly an easy task, because when you like them all, when it's not like some, I don't know, big band with 16 albums and you pretty much figure out already which ones you like the most, which one you like the next, and which ones are not worth even owning. But with this kind of band, when it's only 4 albums and you like them all, and you're like, I don't know, it's hard to pick my favorites. So I did a little bit of going into my brain, doing a little bit of a personal insight and figuring out how much nostalgia actually weighs, which is actually kind of important when it comes to music. I mean, if after all, we're talking about feelings here, emotions which what are raised when we're talking about music. And then I had to weigh a little bit how much the songwriting is actually good. What is the meaning of production and all. And it's finally started to, find those places. At some point, I was like, doing some, yard cleaning from the snow. I was, shoveling snow and all that stuff and listening to this in my earphones and figuring out why this album sounds better than that one. And finally, like I said, it clicked. So the worst one, if I can really call it that, because I like them all, would be the Phantom Lodge one. Why? Because, like I said, even the production is better than the debut album. It kind of misses something that I really find, to like and love so much with Raven Dusk. The difference is not very, very big, but it's still kind of clear to me. So Phantom Lodge would be the one that I would have to let go first if I was to get rid of these albums in the first place. Like I said, it's a good one, but it's not a great one. Then, because of its rather mismatched kind of appearance, I would go Death's Design. This is in position number 3 when it comes from down to the list from the best to the rest. And that is because maybe, it's so much all over. Maybe it's because of its soundtrackish nature. I mean, I love soundtrack music, but still, the nature of things is that, because it's kind of all over the place, and because it's kind of a soundtrack design, and there are parts which just feel a little bit, weird, but then again, fits for the idea of soundtrack, is that it just can't be my favorite one. But I was having a fight in my brain with this one and the one that comes second, and that would be the debut album Raven Dusk in my heart. Originally, I was thinking this could be very well my favorite one, because I got it as first, and it has so great songwriting that even the kind of not weak, but the drum machine isn't really great either. It has these production flaws. They are not, big ones, but kind of figuring out whether or not this could be the favorite one. But after spinning and figuring out, it just had to pave the way for Nightwork, which in my opinion takes the best of both worlds when it comes to the albums before that, Phantom Lords and Raven Dusk. You know, like picking up the best ones, like the best ideas from Raven Dusk, but having more about the production elements from the Phantom Lords, and then just, you know, putting them together, which makes this rather fantastic album. I mean, everything here is like the apex point, for me anyway, when it comes to Diabolical Masquerade. Not so much over the board like Death's Design, but still having this consistency which were there present with the two previous albums. Superb songwriting, great production, nice vocals, well, good vocals. The guitar riffs, the bass, and all the guest musicians with their flutes and all, you know, everything makes kind of a lot of sense. So if you ask me, Diabolical Masquerade is often kind of underlooked, how do I say underlooked? I don't know. Overlooked is probably the right word for a band. That is, I'm trying to say here, it's kind of like a combination of word, you know, underrated and overlooked. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, the point here is, this is often kind of a forgotten gem, a kind of a jewel that people just kind of really didn't find out about, because Katatonia is so much bigger. It's not like Diabolical Masquerade, you know, toured extensively and did a lot of albums. I mean, it was only 11 years whole and more like 5-6 years in total when it comes to recording these albums. So kind of once those forgettable side projects. Not forgettable for me. I've always liked them since 1996. That is more than 25 years now. But I mean, it's easy to just forget these kind of bands which most people don't talk about, because they know about the touring bands, the bands that do a lot of gigs and do a lot of albums which are always on the press. It's not like you see Diabolical Masquerade interviews all over the place. So these kind of things kind of can explain why it is not that, you know, so much talked about. So that is why I wanted to talk about that. You should give this band a listen. It's a great Swedish side project that was, I don't know, too easily forgotten, got too little attention and all that stuff. Great band or side project, which is definitely worth revisiting. You will find this now on, as I was listening to, on your favorite streaming services and of course other places as well. And like I always say, go for the physical product if you really like a band, and there really is this. So there's that, Diabolical Masquerade. Great band, great music, and give it a go. I really hope you like it, and if not, well, at least now you know about it. Thanks for your time, take care, and see you soon with more videos coming your way.